It is often the beliefs that we are carrying with us through life and the beliefs that we're holding. I think a lot of the time we think anxiety and stress is 100% dependent on our environment and what we're getting up to, maybe what our job is. But I've seen people who are doing the exact same job, and one of them is living more at peace and one of them is living more in stress. And so I find that the root cause is often these beliefs that we have around life is hard, work is hard, and we make life so much more difficult than it needs to be. And I say this from experience as well, right? I've definitely done this before where maybe you grew up thinking that in order to be accomplished, you have to put in your blood, sweat, and tears and be withering away at the end of the day. And so there are all these sort of underlying beliefs that we carry that are really the root cause.
Do you want to wake up feeling like you're stepping into who you're meant to be, into the best possible version of you? What if I told you that the key to your best life, health, and happiness are all around you? You just have to find what works for you. I'm Hope Pedraza, and I believe that there isn't just one way to live a healthy and meaningful life, and that all you need is a little inspiration to make changes that last from the inside out. Each week, I'll be sharing tangible tips and inspirational interviews to help you on your journey. These are the steps to take to improve your life and live with purpose. This is Hopeful and Wholesome. Hey y'all, welcome back to the show. Today I have on Hopeful and Wholesome Raman Hari, and she works as an intuitive coach. It combines the modalities of intuitive reading and life coaching, and she's worked with over 1 million people through her social media content and the workshops and one-on-one sessions and all the work that she's doing. And really her work is centered around anxiety and stress and finding your purpose. And we talked today really about the connection between all of those and this chronic stress and anxiety and burnout, how that's really preventing people, specifically entrepreneurs and high-performing people. Even if you're an entrepreneur, but you're just a high-performing person, we need to come up with an acronym for that. I don't know if that exists, but I feel like it should, because I know there's so many of those in my world, just high-performing women who experience the chronic stress and the anxiety and the burnout, and how that really clouds our purpose and our connection to our purpose. And so Raman's going to give us a lot of insight on what that looks like, how it shows up, and then the patterns that are really kind of perpetuating the cycle of us feeling like maybe we've lost our purpose or this disconnection. So a lot of tangible takeaways per usual. Let's jump in. All right, y'all, let's jump in. I'm here with Raman, and she is an intuitive coach, as I mentioned, and I'm excited to dive into kind of some of the big heavy hitters that she's working with her clients, like burnout and anxiety and all the things that, you don't have to be an entrepreneur or business owner to deal with any of those. So thank you so much for joining us today, Raman.
Yes, thank you so much for having me, Hope. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah. So if you could just give us a little brief rundown of what you do as an intuitive coach and kind of the biggest areas that you're working with people.
Yeah. So, recently I've really been sort of tuning into anxiety, stress, burnout, that kind of stuff, just because I realized it's so common nowadays. And it's something I've experienced a lot of. And so I thought, I could definitely tune into this topic a little bit more. And yeah, that's been my main thing for the past at least 6 months. But before that, even now I work a lot on purpose, living a purpose-driven life. I think that's actually quite important for our well-being. And yeah, anxiety, stress, and working on those really subconscious layers that stop us from moving forward in life.
Yeah. So what do you find when you're kind of working with clients and you're like anxiety and burnout? This is a real thing. And I agree with you. I think it's so very common right now. And I think, I dare to say all of us have dealt with it at some point or, on the spectrum of that. And so when you're getting kind of working through this and you do a lot of subconscious work with people, what do you find are a lot of the we talk a lot about root causes on here because I'm a functional practitioner. So what do you find are a lot of the root causes of things like anxiety and burnout?
That's a great question. It is often the beliefs that we are carrying with us through life and the beliefs that we're holding. I think a lot of the time we think anxiety and stress is 100% dependent on our environment and what we're getting up to, maybe what our job is. But I've seen people who are doing the exact same job, and one of them is living more at peace and one of them is living
Right.
more in stress. And so
Right.
I find that the root cause is often these beliefs that we have around life is hard, work is hard. And
Hmm.
we make life so much more difficult than it needs to be. And I say this from experience as well, right? I've definitely done this before where maybe you grew up thinking that in order to be accomplished, you have to put in your blood, sweat, and tears and be
Hmm.
withering away at the end of the day.
Hmm.
And so there are all these sort of underlying beliefs that we carry that are really the root cause.
Hmm.
And so it's really important to kind of look within. And of course, sometimes it is the environment. I don't want to
Sure.
discount that.
Yeah.
Sometimes it is the environment, but
Yeah.
for the most part, it's kind of how we're showing up.
Yeah. And I think too, I think it is typically like a combination of things, but I think it's like you said, like you had like the example, you have two people working the same job. One of them works stress free. The other one is like stressed to the max.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think, it's probably like a chicken or egg situation because I feel like you can be in that situation and your environment is either like feeding that or your thoughts are causing your environment to feed into that. Right.
Absolutely. Yeah. I feel like like the chicken and the egg. It can
Hmm.
really go both ways. And that's why it's so personal for everyone.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you find when you're working with like the like limiting beliefs and stuff, is there and you mentioned a couple examples, but are there some like common denominators among most of the people? Because assuming you work with pretty like, high performing people. What are a lot of the common denominators in those? Like you said one about like work is hard, life is hard. Like what are some other things that come up frequently?
One, and when I do my workshops, I'll say that this might be the most detrimental belief that we
Hmm.
have. And it's that we have to do everything by ourselves.
Mm,
This one will absolutely destroy our well-being.
totally.
And, if we go into work, say like I've worked with managers before, they think, "Oh, it's all up to me."
Right.
Right? I have to make sure that everything is running smoothly. I have to make sure that, all of the employees are um, you know, doing what they need to be doing, but oftentimes we take on
Hmm.
everyone else's stuff
Right.
rather
Right.
than releasing some of that responsibility and also recognizing that we are a collaborative species. We're not meant to just sit alone and do everything ourselves. And
Yeah.
and that can make things not only more difficult, but also less fun.
Totally. I mean, I've had that experience when I first started I have a brick and mortar and I have an online business. When I started my brick and mortar business, and seeing it now, I mean, hindsight, whatever, but seeing it now where for years, that was me. And it was those actually stemming from those other beliefs that you talked about before was work is hard and has to be hard and have to work hard to, blah, 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 to achieve and all that. And for me, it was like, well, in order for me to work hard, that just means I have to do it all by myself. And then I can really show everybody how hard I work. So I think that one, and you're right, it'll totally, I mean, especially your physical and your mental body. I mean, it'll tear you to pieces. I mean, that's what sent me into full on burnout, and it's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot. And I always think, were we placed on a planet with all of these other people?
Yeah,
Like we're
right.
not on a planet all by ourselves. Imagine
Totally.
if you were actually on a planet by yourself, then okay, I understand.
Right.
Do your thing.
Right.
But we're not. There are
Yeah.
so many people everywhere. And I think we also forget that people want to help. I had a cousin recently reach out and I work from home and her fiance and her were getting a table delivered to their place and they had to be at work. And she asked if I could go in and just make sure it was okay. And I was like, oh yeah, sure, I'll be there. No problem. And she was like, thank you so much. Oh my God. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. Like, I like this. Like I
Yeah.
wanted to. If I didn't want to, I would be, whatever. But I wanted to. And I think we are meant to help each other in that way. And I
Yeah.
think we forget that it's actually such a joy to give. And so when
Right.
we allow people to give, it's actually a
Yeah.
gift.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Well, and I think, I'm a firm believer that we are all just part of this puzzle, right? All of us have a special part and we all have special gifts and we're all bringing those special gifts to the collective. And so by you not, asking for help when you need help and letting people take like, and I've said this before in master classes I've done, like all of the like wealthiest, most successful people that you hear, they talk on podcasts of, is they've always hired people who are smarter than them or better at them than things. And that's how they, their rise to the top. And so it's like, okay, we all have special gifts. We all have things that we're here to offer the collective. So if we're not allowing people to help them, we're really also preventing them from using their gifts. So it's like, it's just like a compound effect.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my gosh. I agree with that 100%. Yeah.
Yeah. So when you talk a lot about living from your inner voice, can you speak a little bit about what that means and why this is so important?
Yeah. So I think a lot of us nowadays there are many distractions, right? We could get distracted in a million ways. And what that does is it leads us away from our inner voice. And so our inner voice, to me, I mean, I would define it as our soul's voice. It's like what Oprah calls our inner whisper. It's always there. It's always guiding us. And it's really our map. And the reason why it's so important to really tune into our inner voice is because it actually has the answers that we are seeking. And so again, we're always looking around for all these different answers. And maybe there's a video that's 3 red flags to look out for in a partner, all these kind of things that are out there. And perhaps our inner voice would lead us to one of those videos. But I find that a lot of what people are seeking is in that inner voice rather than everything else that we can be distracted by. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And I think, you were talking about how, initially you were working with people, helping them find their like purpose-driven life, who wanted to lead a purpose-driven life. And now you're leaning into the kind of dealing with burnout, anxiety, and all that. And the inner voice, I mean, all of that, I feel like all of this is related because when we're able to move beyond, you're working with people's limiting beliefs and kind of working on the subconscious, all of that we're able to step into that. So I guess, can you speak to the importance of putting all these pieces together in order to live a more driven life, a more purpose-filled life? Because even though you are kind of have shifted your how you're working with people, it's still essentially the same, right? Because that's what you're helping people do.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, I guess I'll talk about it in terms of, we'll start with like anxiety, burnout stuff, and then the inner voice and purpose. So the anxiety, burnout stuff is so important to look at because if we don't, then we will not be able to tune into that inner voice. And if we're not able to tune into that inner voice, then it will be very challenging to kind of discover or uncover that purpose within us.
Right.
Because again, the purpose is something that's within us. It's like a seed. It's already planted. And again, we don't really, I mean, most people who are living their purpose or their purpose-driven life kind of stumbled into it by accident. It's not something that they sat down and tried to figure out really intensely with their mind. Usually it started from a place of inner healing or looking within or getting creative. And so in order to actually get to that more purpose-driven life, it's so important to work on the anxiety stuff. It's so important to work on the burnout. Because if you're burnt out, the last thing you're thinking about is, okay, how do I live my best life? You can't even access that.
Yeah, you're in survival mode. Yeah,
absolutely. And so survival mode, for the most part, won't really bring us into our purpose. It might sort of push us into looking within, which will uncover the purpose. But yeah, that's how all of those are related. And so even, nowadays, even though I'm working with anxiety and stress and all that kind of stuff, most of the clients I work with are quite purpose driven just because I find that, like attracts like. And so, and again, I think I do want to reiterate, or I don't think I've even said this yet, but purpose doesn't necessarily have to mean your job. Sometimes it can just mean a deeper meaning, something deeper you really want out of life, and that can shift.
Yeah. I think that's an important distinction because I think I had a conversation a couple weeks ago with a guest on my show talking about how we can get so caught up in this whole like searching for a purpose, right? And then it turns into this like, then you're all stressed out about finding that. And I'm like, no, that defeats the purpose.
That defeats the purpose of the purpose.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, totally. Yeah. And it's funny because again, we can go about it in two different ways. We can go about it from a stressed out place, or we can just be open to the
Right.
possibility and be
Right.
curious about what it could be for us. Again, I know that I stumbled upon this career very accidentally. I took my coaching course not to actually become a coach. I just wanted to work on myself. And so
Nice. Yeah.
I know a lot of people have that experience where it's like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
I was just kind of working on myself and I wanted to explore and learn more. And next thing
Mm-hmm.
you know, you realize, oh my gosh, there's something here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the key. I think it's the curiosity piece is big. And then like you mentioned too, that it doesn't have to be this static thing. Like it can fluctuate and it can change and it can evolve. Because I think the other thing is when we're trying to find like our purpose, it's like the purpose. Like it's gonna be this one thing and then it's that forever. And then and it puts us a lot of pressure. Like I think that puts a lot of pressure on it. And so I think understanding that like holding on to that curiosity piece and being open to what comes. Because I think when you're talking about the inner voice piece, I think when you are open and you're listening to your inner voice and you're living from your inner voice, then you're going to let that guide and lead and you're just going to kind of follow the breadcrumbs and just, take it as they come.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's fun. And I think we're also scared of the unknown, but really it's a mystery. And that's what
Yeah.
makes it
Makes it
fun.
fun. Exactly.
Yeah,
Hmm.
absolutely. 100%.
Yeah. And I think just having that perspective of, because I mean, I know I've had that too, putting the pressure on yourself to like find the thing, have to find the thing. And when you release that pressure and yeah, you let the journey be just that, be a journey and let it be fun. I think that's really what it makes it. I think there's more ease to kind of uncovering, discovering what it really is. So let's go back to talking about the patterns. I want to kind of maybe give people maybe some action, tactical things, tangible things that they can take with them. So when you're talking about kind of some recurring limiting beliefs that show up for your clients and stuff. So these limiting beliefs can, create patterns in how we're doing things and how we're living our life. So do you have any like patterns that are sticking out in your head that you see people following victim to? And then how can we untangle those and kind of get up to the other side of those? Some tangible things people might could do now.
Right. So the first one that I always go to is one of the patterns that kind of keeps us stuck in the stress and anxiety loops is running away from our inner world. And
Mm,
again, we see this all the time, right? We feel a bit sad. Okay, I'm just going to go on a Netflix binge and not really think too much
mm-hmm.
about the sadness.
Yep.
Or, we feel angry and we just like over exercise, we overeat, we're constantly doing all these things to kind of get outside of ourselves and to
Mm-hmm.
distract ourselves from what's really going on. And so that's the biggest pattern I've noticed. And, there are so many things we can distract ourselves with.
Mm-hmm.
And so the thing to kind of, counteract that pattern is to simply recognize that you have a whole inner world inside of you that is begging for your attention.
Mm-hmm.
And anytime you feel an inkling to do something maybe impulsive or maybe reactive, it's really looking into that inner world and asking yourself, what's really going on here?
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, the first step is definitely tuning in. And for me, I always think of life as a feeling process. And so instead of trying to analyze, oh my God,
Yep.
like this is happening and blah, blah, and whatever, it's really important to feel into our body, which is what
Mm-hmm.
houses all of our emotions. And that's also where our inner voice is, right? Our inner
Mm-hmm.
voice, a lot of the time, people will feel it kind of like in their gut or maybe in
Right.
their heart. But
Right.
I don't think I've ever in my lifetime heard someone say, "Oh, my inner voice is like somewhere up
Yeah.
here."
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And so in order to kind of access those healing powers that we really have, it's important to kind of tune into our body and our emotional state. And the first step is to just recognize that you are a feeling process being thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
um and and so for me, I love journaling. I'm just such a big
Me
fan of
too.
journaling. I start to go a little cuckoo if I don't journal for a while. I like have to do it. So I like to write down one of my favorite things. A lot of the time when I start my journal, I'll write down the truth is, and I'll just go
Mm.
on. That will be my prompt. The truth is I'm feeling really scared about this, or
That's
the
good.
truth is I'm feeling, whatever it is I'm feeling. And that radical honesty, I think, is
Mm-hmm.
huge. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's really good because I was about to ask you and then you answered my question because I find I love journaling too. And I try to get my clients to kind of implement one of these as like a mindfulness practice. And I found a lot of people have trouble with like just brain dumping. Like, because again, they're overthinking it. And it's like, no, but I like that prompt of, I think that's perfect to get it started. The truth is, and then you can just go from there. That's such a good prompt.
Yeah, it's so simple. But
Yeah.
what I like about it is it kind of gets us into our body,
Right.
because the truth is, it as soon as you say it, it's almost like an exhale, like, oh, the truth is that
Mhm.
this is what's going on.
Right. Because then you have
And
to really
yeah,
feel what the truth is when you're writing it down. Yeah.
you have to feel it. And that's the biggest thing. We've all heard it before. You have to feel it to heal it.
Hmm.
Emotion is energy in motion, and we have to kind of feel into that. We've all heard it before. But it's not something to just talk about. We have to
Yeah.
take action.
Well, yeah. And I think, I mean, yeah, we hear it all the time, but I really don't think people know how to conceptualize that because we live in a society that's all mental, like where we just
Yeah.
we analyze everything and it's all from a mental place. And
Hmm.
so when we're trying to like basically reverse that, and the reverse would be feeling it into your body, we either like don't know what it feels like because we've never felt into our body before, or we don't trust it because a lot of times it's going against what our head is saying. So our mind is telling us one thing, but our body's saying something else. But it's like, no, like the wisdom is in your body. I think we just aren't, at least I think in the Western world, we're just not equipped to like trust our bodies as much, right?
Yes, it's wild how much we are in our heads all the time, and
Mm-hmm.
how much stress and anxiety that can
And
cause.
that's where it comes from. It's mental thing. Stress and anxiety
Yeah,
is a mental
it
pressure.
is
Mm-hmm.
the spiraling of that mind. Yeah. And so getting into our body, it's almost like we're bypassing the mind,
Exactly.
and
Yep.
we're getting straight to the root. And so oftentimes, when people, when I first started my journey with my first coach, I had a lot of repressed anger. And she said, have you ever tried any like kickboxing or something kind of physical to get it out? And I'm very like, I'm such a give me homework and I'll do it. So next thing you know, I'm at a kickboxing studio and the instructor's taking me on the orientation, and he asks, oh, so like what brings you in? What are your fitness goals? And I told him, I'm like, oh, so apparently I have a lot of repressed anger that I need to get
That's
out.
awesome.
And we're friends to this day, but it was just
That's
so funny. He's like,
great.
I've never heard anyone come in and say that. Everyone's trying to lose weight or,
Right,
get
right, right.
toned. And then here's this girl
Oh,
wanting to get her anger out.
that's hilarious.
Yes. And so I went in, and the thing is, there's so much in our bodies that we don't realize. Once I started kickboxing, and I was very intentional too, I knew, okay, I'm going in and something's going to be released.
Right,
I
right.
would get home after kickboxing and I would just like sob, cry for like 10 minutes.
You
And
released it.
that was when I knew, oh my God, this is working,
Mm-hmm.
because something is going on emotionally here and something's being released. And sometimes we don't even
Yes.
know what it is or what
Mm-hmm.
traumas are,
Mm-hmm.
trapped in our body. But when we
Yes.
can get into the physical, it's amazing how quickly
Yep.
we heal.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's so true. I was listening to I don't know if you know who Richard Rudd is, the creator of Gene
No.
Keys, but I was listening to I think he was on a podcast or something, and he was talking about that, about these like I think he was specifically talking about anxiety, and he was talking about how, it gets stored in our DNA and our bodies and all this. And he was saying, a lot of people just get so tied up in trying to figure out why it's there. And whether it's, from childhood trauma or generational trauma or it's ancestral trauma that's in our DNA. But he's like, who cares? It doesn't matter. Like, because I think people too, they, like you're saying, like, you go to do your kickboxing, then you come home and you're crying. And some people would freak out, like, why am I crying? But it really doesn't matter. There's something there that needs to be released and it's being released. So I think like releasing the need to have to explain why it's happening or understand why it's happening. Again, it's staying in the body because that again is where we get caught up in the head because then our head's trying to figure out like,
Mm.
why is it happening? Where did it come from? And so, yeah, I love that is been your like method for release. That was your method for release. That is, and it's such a great example. Like you're literally getting into your body and then all these things that's such a great example.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, you bring up such a good point with not having to know. I personally, and this is different for everyone, I like to know. I'm
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
tell me where it's
Give me
coming
the
from.
answers. Yep.
Give me the childhood stuff. And I also find that, again, when we get into the body, like we might actually start to notice certain memories coming up.
Yep.
And so
Yep.
that
That's
kind
true.
of leads us to the answers,
Mm-hmm.
which can help our mind kind of understand.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, there's so many, like, countless times where I've heard people say, oh, I've always had this like chronic pain in my hips. And then they'll try yoga and they'll do like a hip
Mm-hmm.
stretch or
Opener.
something.
Yep.
And next thing
Mm-hmm.
you know, a hip opener. And next thing you know, they're
Yes.
kind of getting emotional too. So
Totally.
it's amazing
Yeah.
how, how much is in our body and how important it is to do
Yeah.
that kind of work. I wanted to mention as well, I find that there is a difference between kickboxing and just, okay, I'm doing the workout versus I'm
Right.
going in here to intentionally release something.
Right.
I
Right.
find that the work works when you're almost like aware of,
Yeah,
this is what
there's
I'm
an
doing.
intention. Yeah, there's an intention
Yes.
behind it for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's such a good point to make because I think that applies to everything. I mean, it's the intention behind it, the energy behind it. And if you're going with that energy behind it, then you're going to have a more powerful experience than just
Yeah.
being, la di da, just going to do,
Yeah, just
burn some
doing my
calories. Yeah.
workout.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm. Yeah.
and that's I think important because, like, I'm thinking of a specific client right now who was very was having panic attacks, but then
Hmm.
also was over exercising, but
Hmm.
that was also kind of running
Contributing.
away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's why I think it's really important to know the intention behind
Hmm.
what we're doing. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I love that. I do have one more question that I want to ask you. And before I ask you that, do you have any last minute like tips, strategies that people can, who are working through these kind of things might want to put into practice?
Ooh, good question. I mean, I feel like we touched on the physical, really making sure you're getting into the movement, getting into the body. But I think the only thing that's really coming up is having radical compassion for yourself
Mm-hmm.
and not healing from a place of like, oh my God, I gotta heal.
Yes,
Oh my
yes.
God.
Mm-hmm.
But really understanding that like you're a human being and you've had all these experiences, and whatever it is for you that you're experiencing, it can be healed, absolutely. And like really go about it from a place of loving yourself into
Mm-hmm.
healing rather than like hating where you're at in
Right.
healing.
That's such a good
That's
point.
the only thing that's coming up.
Yeah, that's such a good point and very good. Again, it's that the intentionality behind it, the energy behind it. And that's such a good point. That's such a good point. Okay, before I ask you my last question, can you let everybody know where they can find out more about you and your coaching and everything that you're helping people with right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am in love with coaching. I love talking about it. You can find me on Instagram at Raman Hari 3. And if you are interested in doing more one-on-one work, I am specifically working through a program called Beyond Anxiety with
Mm,
my clients. And it's a one-on-one program. So you're kind of, sitting with me every single week for 12 weeks. And we really work on making friends with the anxiety, kind of understanding where it is in the body and really getting into that, shifting some of the triggers that come up, and really getting you to a baseline of peace. And
mhm,
my intention is that by the end of the program, you will have a baseline of peace.
mhm,
And yeah, I mean, the work works. I used to deal with a lot of anxiety myself. And so,
mhm.
yeah, it's just really amazing to be able to see people shift. And yeah, I mean, that's the main thing that I'm working with clients on right now. And so you can check that out on my website, ramanhari.com.
Perfect. And of course, I'll put links to that in the show notes so you can go check that out. The last question that I want to ask you that I like to ask everybody, what do you think, speaking of purpose, what do you think is the most important thing you can do to live with purpose?
Hmm, being of service. Yeah, I think that's truly what our purpose is, whether it is, for me right now, I feel like my purpose is the coaching stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
But also, if I'm doing the coaching stuff and then I'm not being of service in other areas of my life, I feel like something's missing. So,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it really comes back to love. But even if you are a mom, like really being of service to that role, that amazing, role that you're playing on the planet. So yeah, it always comes back to being of service.
Yeah, I love that. I so agree. Thank you so much, Raman. This is such a good conversation, and I appreciate you sharing all of your insight and your wisdom and just helping people through these subconscious things that all of us deal with and on the path to healing.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. This was so fun.
Thanks for listening to Hopeful and Wholesome, y'all. If you found value in this week's episode, please subscribe on iTunes or wherever you listen to your podcast and leave a review to let me know what you thought. I'd love to know what you find useful in these episodes so I can know how to provide the most value I can to my listeners. And if you have topics you'd like to know more about, I'd love to hear those as well. So shoot me a message on Instagram, Facebook, or LinkedIn. It's @TheHopePedraza, or you can visit my website, hopefulandwholesome.com. Thanks, y'all.